Okay. I'm back once again, right? And I want you to fully understand why I even take time to make these lives in these videos, right? And I think I briefly said it before, talking about these subject matters. I'm starting to hear, I'm starting to hear too many black men, right, say they support Republicans over the Democrat. And all it takes is for one intelligent or smart black man to say he Republican for it started festering amongst a whole other lot of black men. So, whether you support Republican views or Democratic views is actually really important. But if you're going to take one side to the other, I just want to put you in a position where you understand what's really going on. And I'm starting to see people that say they understand what's really going on really don't have a clue what's going on. So I'm just trying to educate people, right? Because if you leave your research up to politicians, or you leave your education up to somebody that's a staunch Republican, you're not going to get the totality of the truth. You follow what I'm saying? I'm one of them people that I'm a firm believer in half the truth is a whole lie. And I ain't saying no names because I ain't trying to embarrass particular individuals because it's not about them. But I do know that one person's view of seeing things represents a collective people group that see it the same way, but they might be flawed or mistaken in how they're seeing it. Because all the Republicans are calling democratic views socialism, right? And it's people that I know that are quote unquote non-socialists or whatever they claim is democratic views as socialists, and they're not for real if they understand what's really going on. Now let me get into it, right? Notice the Republican views, right, only apply to you if you make anywhere between $5 to $10 million a year. If that's not the kind of money you're making, nothing Republicans are pushing benefits you. Republicans are always trying to reduce government spending. Reduce it. That sounds good on the surface, but they're not telling you why they are trying to reduce government spending. The only reason why they're trying to reduce government spending because they're trying to cut taxes for billionaires. They're not going to say that though. What they're going to tell you is we're just simply cutting taxes. Because if you tell the people that you're cutting taxes, you're telling a half truth. You follow what I'm saying? That's a half truth. And it's also a whole lie. Whenever Republicans cut taxes, 67% of those tax cuts are in categories that non-wealthy people already are not paying into. So quintessentially, they become tax cuts for billionaires. But whenever you cut taxes for billionaires, there is a cost to them tax cuts. They're not for free. So the only way those tax cuts for these billionaires can be justified is they're going to have to now take away from other government services. But the government services they're always trying to cut back on are the government services that give better quality of living to low income, middle income, working class people. So quintessentially, when you get those lesser government services, you as a non-wealthy individual is paying for the tax cut for the billionaire. Now, what you got to understand is if you are a billionaire, you can afford any tax they put on you. And it don't hurt you. So when they're talking about cutting taxes for these billionaires, that's just pure greed. But the cost is they take away from services that give a better quality of life to low income and middle income and working class peoples. You follow what I'm saying? Or it's paid through higher future taxes. So quintessentially, if you're not a person that's making 5 to 10 million a year, you're paying for the tax cut for the billionaire. Now, I was engaged in a conversation with a brother that thinks that he's Republican. And the only reason why I say he thinks he's being Republican, because he's basing his beliefs on a plethora of pure ignorance and just not knowing. And he preaches the same rhetoric that Republicans preach in their literature. But he too ignorant to realize he not one of them. Like he'll say something like, they need to cut government spending, right? And why should I be helping somebody out that's too lazy to get up and work? That's what he's saying. Okay, so now let me give you some details to how foolish you sound. First of all, misconception number 1. Stop thinking that government assistance is for welfare people only. What's up, Dave? How you doing? Get that myth out of your head. That myth is put in your head by some billionaire Republican campaign holder. It's a lie. People that work every day have a better quality of living because the government subsidizes that better quality of living and you work every day. Okay, now let me explain this, right? I already told you the first thing that Trump did to cut that government spending was he cut the DEI program. Diversity. What does that DEI stand for? I'm drawing a blank. Diversity, equality, and inclusion. I think I said it right. He cut the DEI program, right? I explained that to you, right? Once them jobs went away, a whole lot of white women lost their jobs. And they were shocked because they didn't know that they were hired under the DEI program. 63% of all DEI hires were white women. They thought DEI hires were predominantly black. African Americans, men and women, DEI hires were only 4%, right? All right. The largest demographic of DEI hires are white women. That's 63%. So now that they lost their jobs, they realize that ain't good. But it's good, right, when you think it's happening to niggas or Spanish people or non-whites. But now when you realize it's you that's being affected, you realize it ain't good no more. You follow what I'm saying? Okay, that ain't another thing that he does. The second thing is Medicaid. Right? Medicaid. Social Security, right? Medicaid, unemployment insurance. All of that falls under mandatory spending. So whenever presidents get in office, right, and they start trying to cut federal government spending, they technically only supposed to cut federal government spending in things that are categorized as discretionary spending. not mandatory spending. Okay? That's like police forces, federal agencies, DEA, ATF. You cut there. But this is what Donald Trump has been doing with Medicaid. He's not doing away with it because he can't. But he's trying to change the system of how Medicaid is financed by using this block grant system. Now, under the traditional system for Medicaid, right? Thank you, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I thought I was saying it right. I wasn't sure. Thanks, Anthony. But anyway, back to here. The block grant system. First of all, let me let you understand how the previous system worked. The previous Medicaid system, right, is a marriage between the federal government and the state government, right? The feds match the money that the state can afford to put up. And the federal government gives each state the amount of money they need based on how many people in that state actually need the Medicaid. Okay, if you switch that on the block grant system, the federal government now no longer partners with that state. But how block grants give you money, the amount of money they give you is based on your historical spending and not based on actually how many people in your state need the Medicaid. So this can cause you to be now underfinanced. And when a state becomes underfinanced and the burden of Medicaid is solely on the state with no federal government help, the state have to come up with ways to maintain the same level of benefits they had when the federal government was helping them. And how would they do that? They might have to raise state taxes. Yes, raise state taxes to generate the revenue that the federal government used to help them. Now, guess what? If they raise state taxes, right? That is literally you paying for these billionaire tax cuts. Because now you're paying higher taxes at the state level. So some billionaire can have a tax cut. They got plenty of money. Second of all, under the block grant system, it eliminates the emergency response mechanism that used to be in place when the federal government was partnering with these states. What is the emergency response mechanism that I'm talking about? Should a recession hit or a public health crisis hit, your Medicaid will automatically expand to give you coverage during a recession and to give you coverage should a public health crisis should hit like it hit in 2019 when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Your Medicaid automatically covered all of that because the feds was involved. Now that the feds is out of it, that emergency response mechanism is gone now. So the state itself may not be able to adjust. And if they still can't compensate it by raising state taxes, they can start now cutting off or minimizing the benefits you got under Medicaid. Now, guess what? Every human being who's worked hard and paid taxes all of their lives and have finally retired, guess what their health insurance is? Medicaid. So now, do you want your mother, your mother-in-law, your father-in-law to have less medical coverage under Medicaid? And a worse program, knowing they are older now and your health fails the older you get because you ain't young like you used to anymore? Is that what you really want? See, this is the cost, right, of these tax cuts these billionaires want. They ain't tell you it's for them. They just saying we cutting taxes. Because they hoping your ignorant tail think you included when you're not. But you know what you included on? You're including on paying the cost so they can get it. Now remember, I'm going to reiterate some things that I said on the previous video. And I used Donald Trump himself as an example so that you could get a good working understanding of how these billionaires' lives are like under the Internal Revenue Code. Okay? Remember, Donald Trump was a real estate investor. So when you are a real estate investor, right, the IRS has in Congress set rules in place where you can legally pay no federal income taxes. And you can legally report your income as zero if you can prove that the depreciation on your commercial real estate exceeded the money you made. Now, I gave you this for example, because I live in DC. I'm going to use things that we can relate to and we understand. We got a casino actually in Prince George's County, Maryland, in Oxon Hill called the National Harbor. It's an MGM casino, but it sits on the borderline of Southeast Washington, right? The building itself is appraised at $1 billion, the MGM property. With the casino, the hotel, all of that, that's $1 billion property. Now, at the time, for 20 years, Trump owned the Shorehaven Apartments in New York, commercial building. He owned a couple of casinos. You know what I'm saying? He owned Trump Towers. So imagine owning several properties that's appraised at $1 billion. You can easily justify $65 million worth of depreciation. So it can literally put him in a position where he can make $65 million a year and legally say, I had zero income. Because the $65 million he made and got all cold cash for, he can justify $65 million in depreciation on all them commercial assets. In some instances, like they can pay their taxes in future years. But when they pay their taxes in future years, right, it gives them the ability to flip what they owe the government several times over. So by the time they write that $23 million check off to the government, they done made $130 million off of it. And this is the equivalent to getting an non-interest-free loan from the federal government, whereas everybody else that borrowed money from a lending institution had to pay it back with interest. So I'm just telling you all of this to let you know for 20 years he ain't paid no federal income taxes because the IRS have laws and rules that benefit super wealthy people to the point they ain't already paying no damn taxes. So why in the hell they want to cut even more taxes? It's just pure greed. Well, the Democratic Party, right? They don't favor those people. Those people are Republican represented. And let me explain to you why. It's not that it's not because the Republicans are racist and the Democrats are not. Let me clear that whole misconception up. Understand this. America, the United States of America, is racist. Okay? So the Republicans are racist and the Democrats are racist. So we're not picking a side to say who's the least racist. They both are. Okay? Just like Bill Clinton called us super predators and signed the crime bill. Well, guess what? In the state of New York, why you think the Rockefeller laws are called the Rockefeller laws? Nelson Rockefeller was the senator in New York back in the 70s. He was a Republican. He was the first one that created the RICO statute for drugs like you do crime bosses. They both was white men. They both was racist. But nevertheless, I don't want to get on that because that's a whole nother subject. Let me get back to the topic. Let me stay on topic. The Democrats understand this, right? The Democrats have a more balanced understanding of what keeps the country afloat. They know they cannot count on the super rich to pay their taxes, which is ultimately the monies the United States government used to pay its bills to the world. And the reason why you cannot count on them to pay taxes is because they got too many loopholes like Donald Trump to get out of it. See, the W-2 employee, I keep saying employee, that's an accident. The W-2 employee, the W-9 employee is the worst category in the whole IRS code. It's the only category of taxpayer where you have no write-offs and you pay maximum taxes. These are the people that they're counting on to pay the bills. So the Democrats look out for the low income, middle, and the working class because they counting on you to have to get out of the bed every morning, punch a clock, make your check so they can take the taxes out of your check and pay China, pay all these other foreign governments that they borrow money from annually. Y'all make the dollar valid. Y'all make the U.S. dollar worth something because the United States dollar is not backed by gold. It's not backed by oil. It is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States of America. It's backed simply on America's word. You want to know why? The United States of America have not defaulted on an annual payment since George Washington became the first president and Alexander Hamilton became the first Treasury Secretary. So the word, 60% of the world just believe that when the United States saying we're going to pay you, they got you. The people that go to work every day as employees, right? Those are the people that counting on to pay the bills. So when Democrats get in office, they do raise taxes. But they're not raising taxes for you. Okay? They're raising taxes for billionaires. You know why they raise taxes for the billionaires? They don't already pay their fair share, one. Two, when they raise taxes for billionaires, it creates stronger government so non-wealthy people can enjoy a better quality of life. If you're not wealthy, then you are emphatically Democratic. Let me explain to you why, right? Now check this out, right? I'm gonna bring it to what's going on right now. The reason why the federal government is shut down right now, right, is because the Democrats are saying this ACA tax credit need to be extended in this new bill. The Republicans are saying, nah, we're going to cut that shit out. Now, understanding what I just shared to you today, let's put it all together and package it. First of all, you have not taken away Medicaid because you can't. It's mandatory spending. You can't touch that. But you're now changing how Medicaid is financed. You're saying the federal government not going to no longer help the states anymore. And you're going to back them out to finance a tax cut for a billionaire, right? Weakening Medicaid now. Because now states have to foot the bill by themselves. And if they can't foot it, they can raise state taxes. When they raise state taxes, guess who's going to pay them? You are. Not them billionaires that got all the loopholes to get out of that shit anyway. You paying it. Now your state taxes going to raise and your Medicaid going to be worse than it was when the feds was helping. God forbid if COVID-25 don't come out. Guess what? You ain't going to have enough coverage to help you out in the pandemic. God forbid if a recession come out. You know, whenever Republican presidents are in office, Recessions is what they do. They start the unemployment. Where the unemployment begin by cutting federal government jobs. When you cut federal government jobs, it becomes a domino now into the private sector. Everybody start cutting jobs. You follow what I'm saying? So if a recession hit, if a public health crisis hit, guess what? Ain't no more emergency response where the federal government will balloon your Medicaid coverage so it just expands to cover all of those things that you didn't foresee. That's gone now. Because the block grant that they're using to finance it don't do what the federal government used to do. In fact, the block grant only going to give a state a certain amount of money based on how they used to spend. Well, what happens if people that come from other states move to your state and need Medicaid? Then your spending for this year going to increase. But the block grant say you get a certain amount of money based on how you spent last year or years before. Well, your past spending ain't today's spending. If you got new people moving to your state, they need Medicaid. So you're already not getting enough in Medicaid. And on top of that, they saying, let's not extend the ACA tax credit too. So you're giving people a worse quality of Medicaid, right? Wow, Giants 5-day the ball. Let me get back. You're giving people a worse quality level of Medicaid, right? And then you trying to cut the ACA tax credit out. And I explain what that is, right? The government, right, would take money, federal government, take money, right? And they'll get that money to your health insurance companies. What are they doing? They'll help subsidizing your health insurance plan so you can have a quality health insurance plan, but you pay lower monthly premiums. And the lower your income, the more money your insurance company get so you can have good health insurance, but pay a premium you can afford. Well, if they don't extend that credit, guess what's going to happen? You are going to now have to pay higher monthly premiums, higher state taxes for a lousier Medicaid. And if the states get overwhelmed, they can start minimizing benefits you used to get when the feds was involved. So the Democrats said, absolutely not. You greedy ass billionaires are losing your mind. You cannot do the working class like this because you can't break them. Breaking them will be breaking the United States of America, because the United States of America is built on the back of small businesses. It's built on the back of the people you want to get their ass about to be and go to work every day so we can take the taxes out they check. That's what they're thinking about. So why should black people be democratic? Because most black people, most of us, it's more of us that get up and go to work every day than it is there's millionaires and billionaires. Now, let me qualify this too, right? Medicaid let me say this though. Medicaid under this Donald Trump block grant system is similar to why DC should never become a state. There's a financial pejorative impact on DC becoming a state. And when I say pejorative, I mean negative. See, right now, the District of Columbia gets special treatment from the federal government because they have a fiscal relationship and they're not classified as a state. See, right now, the feds got something called they have the Federal Medical Assistance Percentages, what they go off of. In other words, the feds help finance your Medicaid, right? under the traditional system. The District of Columbia, under the traditional system, gets 70% of Fed backing added to DC's Medicaid. They used to get 50%. Right? If they became a state, they would lose that they would lose that 70% help from the feds, and they'll go back to 50%. You know why that would happen? Because the mathematical algorithm would state that the District of Columbia as a state is too rich relative to people per capita. But that numerical algorithm ain't accurate to what's really going on. See, DC is the home of some extremely wealthy people, but it ain't a lot of them. You got to realize Jeff Bezos live in DC. He's a billionaire. Niggas like Jeff Bezos fucked the algorithm up for District of Columbia. But we know that everybody east of the Anacostia River, ain't nobody in Ward 8 one of them billionaires. You follow what I'm saying? But not only that, mathematically, right? The national average for people whose health insurance is Medicaid that are non-elderly is 13.9%. You know what percentage of DC residents whose health insurance is Medicaid and they're non-elderly? 22%. So we disproportionately have a lot of people who health insurance that's Medicaid that are not retired people. See, when you on welfare, public assistance, Section 8, things of that nature, your health insurance is Medicaid. So we disproportionately have a lot of children, young people, young mothers that's not at the retirement age that's on Medicaid. 22%. The national average is 13%. So that's an accurate depiction of how many non-wealthy people are in DC. So if DC was to become the state, the District of Columbia would lose approximately $310 million they get from the feds to finance Medicaid in DC. So they would have to come up with ways to make up the 310 that the Fed used to give. Now, how would they have to do that? Raise DC state taxes. Well, this is one of the reasons why DC ain't gonna ever become a state. Because people hollering, let's become the 51st state, don't know what the hell they're asking for. For real. Well, this is the same thing with this ACA tax credit being taken away and the Medicaid going on the block grant system. But that's not the only places where they cut spending at. They're also cutting finances to the CDC, Center of Disease and Control. Now, it don't take a rocket science to figure out what sense does that make, being though we just got finished experiencing a global pandemic in 2019, which is proof that this shit can happen. So for those out here that's under this misconception is I shouldn't have to be paying for all of these government services to help welfare queens out, let me tell you something. People go to work every day on SNAP benefits because their paychecks that they take home ain't enough to eat. So get it out your head that SNAP benefactors are people that don't want to work. That's not true. A lot of these government programs, this government assistance, is helping aid a better quality of life for people who do get up and go to work every day. Welfare people are included, but it's incomplete to think it's just concluded. It's just as incomplete as these white women that voted for Trump that thought the DEI program was a nigger program. It's not false that niggas was included. But what was false was you thought we was 100% of the program, nigga. No, we was 4%. Y'all was the biggest demographic. Y'all was 63%. And you didn't know it until you got the phone call to say turn your laptop in and your work phone in. Wait, what's happening? What do you think happening? You didn't know that this is what this man planned to do before you talk about you was a Trump supporter? You don't know what you supporting. I'm going to end it right there. I'm just trying to help y'all understand what's really going on as opposed to what you think is going on when you talking about you a Republican. No, the hell you not. And let me explain this to you, right? I got to deal with this. I should have ended, but I'm not. I'm going to say this, right? I'm going to say this much, right? Because I was having this conversation with a close friend of mine, right? Because I don't like to talk out the side of my neck, right? I got a buddy that is a millionaire. For real. And you know what? He agreed that what I was saying was right. And he explained it from the horse's mouth just like this. He said, I'm a millionaire, but I still got democratic views. And this is what you got to understand is true. For the black men, right? That are millionaires, this is what you got to know from black people don't come from wealth. So when you got a black man that makes it as a millionaire, don't think his whole family millionaires too. They're not. They're not. His daddy wasn't a millionaire. His mama wasn't a millionaire. His mama worked all her life. She retired now. So you know what she gets? Social Security. She gets pension. What's her health care? Medicaid. Medicaid. Now, if they weaken the Medicaid so some greedy ass billionaire could get a tax write-off, what's going to happen if she don't get enough coverage? Who going to have to foot the bill? The man that's a millionaire. He got children, kids. He got one daughter that got 3 kids. She make $100,000 a year, but that's not a lot of money when you got 3 kids you feeding. So who makes up the difference when they don't have stuff? God forbid if they play sports. You know how that conversation go. I ain't buying no $1,000 worth of baseball equipment. I ain't got time for that. You better talk to you better give your granddaddy a call. That's how that conversation go. So whatever your non-wealthy family members go through as a result of these Republicans squeezing non-wealthy people so billionaires can get tax cuts, that one millionaire in the family got to foot the bill to make up the difference to help them people. This is why I make the statement, if you don't make in excess of 10 million, it don't make sense to Republican. You want to know why? A person that make 10 million a year has enough money to stay rich and help his family members that are non-wealthy. You got to remember, these billionaires like Trump, they whole family rich. They brother rich. Their father was rich before them. Their cousins rich. Their daughters are marrying men whose fathers been billionaires before them. So when you're a billionaire, your daughter marries the son of a billionaire, because that's what happened. That's how the Kushners got related to the Trumps. Jared Kushner is the son of Charles Kushner. He was already another billionaire that was suffering from the billions that Trump had. Not to mention that Trump's father died and left him $200 million. See, when they surrounded in wealth. This is why non-wealthy people problems ain't their concern. But the people that's not these Republicans concerned, you one of them, nigga. How you a Republican? I'm gonna stop right there.